In this video, we're going to take a look at a magenta ink that's scented by Atramentis Cola. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the magenta playlist, so if you wanted to find more of them, you could find that there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, spread, halo sheen. We get some shading in the stub that was writing. I wanted to say, that it might not have been the stub, but looking at the D and the T in Atramentis, it is the stub. It's just writing very narrow this day. But we do get some shading up there. We get some light shading in the extra fine, some light shading in the medium. All of them generally are the same tone. The extra fine took 6 seconds to dry, while the medium took 9. Scrubby for both show a slight bit of color variation, just slight, but it's definitely there in the writing. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a Pilot Metropolitan with a fine nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. We get no bleeding, but some minor ghosting. No feather, spread, halo sheen. We get some shading in the stub. We get some shading in the extra fine. No shading in the medium. Now the medium, while they all largely look to be the same tone, the medium only is showing its darkest tone. The extra fine took 11 seconds to dry, while the medium took 20. The scrubby for both show no color variation, although the extra fine does have some. And the smear test you could probably recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And this is a very straightforward as far as the color goes, because it is all magenta all the way through. It's running away from the water and gathering at the top. This is also an interesting opportunity to show how out of order some of the writing samples to the reviews are done. That little 34 on the top was my sample number. That means this was the 34th ink that I ever actually tested in anything. And it's taken this long to get to it because I get headaches from scented inks and will put off sometimes until I need to do it. Now the one on the right is let dry for 10 minutes before it's put into water. And it looks exactly the same, meaning we don't expect any kind of resistance from this ink. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, spread, halo sheen. We get some shading in the stub, some shading in the extra fine, not nearly as much as I was expecting. Little spots that are darker in the medium, so it's not shading a whole bunch, but it's definitely giving us dark spots. The extra fine is certainly lighter than the stub or the medium, and the stub and medium are the same tone. Extra fine took 7 seconds to dry, while the medium took 13. Scrubby for both show a tiny bit of color variation, and it does show a little bit in the dark spots that do occur, not a ton of shading in itself, but the smear test says you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink could be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it's a great thing to use if you want to completely destroy everything about your notes. Now, water shows why, as it's reactivating and lifting most all of this ink off the page. Pen flush does everything that water does and nothing more, and the 1/3 bleach solution, as you would expect, completely destroys it. Of course, it only took water to get this out of my pen. The next writing sample is done on a composition lab notebook like you would have used in science class. No bleeding, some very minor ghosting. We have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, minor spots of shading that do occur in the extra fine, which is lighter than the medium. The extra fine took 2 seconds to dry. Its scrubby shows no color variation, and we only get a couple dark spots. Now the smear test you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. The Atramentis Cola has a viscosity of 3.01, so this is a drier ink. If you're interested in how the viscosity tests are done and how the bell curve's made and all of that, then down in the description is a link to that video. The next writing sample is done on a Mead notebook. We get no bleeding, but we get a significant amount of into the page, which would stop me from using the back of the page, but it doesn't mean it would stop you. Everything I'm circling, it makes it look like much more than it is. It's really very good performance on this paper. We have minor feathering in the extra fine, very minor feathering in the medium. We have no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, though the extra fine is a little lighter than the medium. The extra fine took 1 second to dry. The scrubby shows no color variation. We didn't get it in the writing. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. The Atramentis Cola has an average dry time of 11 seconds, so it's a faster drying ink. The last writing sample is done on 20-pound copy paper. No bleeding, none of it touched the next page, but all of it, in how deep it is into the page, would stop me entirely from using the back of the paper. Now we get feathering on the medium, we get feathering on the extra fine. Neither of these seem horrible. Nothing to say don't use it for it. It's all tiny feathers. There's no real spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a little lighter than the medium. It only took a second to dry. The scrubby showed no color variation, and there was none. And a smear test, you can't smear it, so don't worry about it. Instead of finding inks that look like the Atramentis Cola, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I decided to go with a black ink by Noodler's, their Bulletproof Black. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description is a link to those playlists. So what do I think of the Atramentis Cola? I tried this dry fine to keep the scent down. It didn't work. I have a headache while I'm writing this. This would be the last scented ink I ever review. But accidents can happen, but I'm going to avoid them like the plague. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? Obviously, from what I was just writing, a dry fine is not the best way to go. It becomes far too light to really read comfortably for a whole page. I would go with a medium flow, medium pen to really get the nicest color out of this. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Pilot's Mixable Yellow.